What is up, Hammerheads? Welcome back to the Forge. Today, we're making a trammel hook. Stay tuned. Alright guys, so let's look at this trammel hook real fast and talk about the construction. A trammel hook is designed to go with your tripod and make it to where you can adjust a pot or something up and down off the fire. Now, this trammel hook is a perfect height for my tripod. Now, and I'm going to say this multiple times throughout the video, you're going to have to measure and determine how big of a trammel hook you want. If you have a wider base tripod, and it sits lower to the ground in your fire, you're going to need a shorter trammel hook. Or if you have a bigger one that's taller, you're going to need a longer and more heavier duty one. But this is what they're designed for, guys, to raise and lower different pots and different things off of the fire so you can adjust them as they cook so you don't burn your food and things like that. But just wanted to show you how this worked before we get going. You got a good idea of what you're looking at. All right, guys, so the first thing I'm doing is I am making marks because I am going to make a series of holes every 2 inches. So this piece is right at 19 inches long. Now, depending on how long or how tall your tripod is going to determine how long you're going to want your trammel hook to be. I roughly 19 to 20 inches is going to do everything perfect for the height of my trammel hook. Or the height of, for the height of my trammel hook versus off the height of my tripod. So, what I did was I made a mark up here at 3 inches. Now, everything above 3 inches is going to be my hook. That's why it's marked here. Now, I went at 5 inches, at 7, 9, 11, and 15. And then I have one more that I'm going to do down here at the bottom. And that is where, and you'll see it, as you've seen it completed, guys, this is where the hook comes into it. Your other portion of your hook comes in, and what will hook into each one of those holes. Now, I'm going to drill these holes out and then drift them a little bit to make them fit the steel. You can punch these, and we've went through punching holes quite a few times on this channel. So I always drill them really fast because I get them a little more uniform. And then I just drift out whatever it is that I need. All right, guys, just to reiterate what we're doing, or the material we're using 1/2 inch by 1/4. And then I'm using 3/8 round bar. You can go heavier gauge and wider steel if you want to. This is going to work perfect for what I need for my trammel hook. Okay, guys. So we're making just a basic J hook. It's going to be a little bigger. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about how to make a J hook because I have a very detailed video that I will pin in the comments and also leave in the description. And if I can figure it out, also have it pop up on the screen at the end on how to make a basic J hook. Now, I'm not going to do any twists or anything in this bar. I want everything to be very basic and slick. So when I come back out, I'm going to make my finial, then I'm going to make my J hook. When you're making bigger J hooks, you can kind of get them a little wonky and like have flats on them. Because it's a bigger hook, they're a little bit more cumbersome to make. So be careful when you're doing that. And then we're going to flip around, cool it down, because mild steel will throw it in the slack tub. And then we'll come back and we're going to make the part that goes into, will hook into our trammel hook. All right, let's go back in the fire. Okay, guys, so we're going to make our finial, and I'm going to make a little bit bigger finial just because I like the way those look on bigger hooks. All right, now, I'm gonna quench it. And just like any other hook we do, I'm gonna just start going over the horn, going over the anvil, hammering back to myself. Now, simple J hook right there, guys. Now, I like doing a bigger hook for my Trammel hooks because when I'm going onto the fire with a pot or coming off the fire with a pot, I don't want to fight with the hook. I want enough space that I can set it on there and it's going to hang fine. And I don't have to fight with it, so I have enough gap here. You could also, if you wanted to, leave your finial, don't make a finial and leave it like a little bit of a blunt tip, and you can slide meat onto that if you wanted to. But we made the prongs for our spit the last video. If you haven't watched that, go check that out. Something simple, guys. I'm just trying to make it look prettier. But go check out that video if you have not checked out the one for our spit, or the prongs for the spit to hold the meat. All right, we're gonna cool this down. We're gonna go back in the fire, then we're gonna work on the other side. This side is very important how you make it. Guys, so the first thing we're going to do is start tapering this end. Now, I don't need it to be a huge taper, but I do want it to have a little bit of a taper so it goes in and out of the holes on the Trammel hook. Now, I'm going to turn this 180 so where my hook is sticking upright. I'm going to take, let me grab my measure real quick, guys. I found this thing at like a, I don't remember where I got it. I don't know if I got this from my grandpa or if I found it after he passed, or if I found it in a box lot of things I got years ago. But it's just a cool old aluminum measure. All right, guys, so I'm gonna come back about 2 inches, all right? And I'm gonna do a bend. It might be more of a, yeah, but I'm gonna do a slight angled bend. Be about 2 inches, because I want enough material sticking through that it hangs. I don't want too much to where it gets bent, hit. But I'm thinking maybe about 2 inches is gonna be perfect. So, about 2 inches. Now, it don't have to be exact science, I just wanted to show you, or exact math. But about 2 inches is gonna come off the edge of the anvil, and then I'm gonna knock it back. So it's gonna be at a slight angle down. It's gonna be a little bit of a sharper curve. All right, guys, so about 2 inches. Move the magnet down. Now, I'm at this point. Now I'm gonna roll it up and I'm hammering it to myself. And I want it to look like this, because this is gonna actually hook on our Trammel. Now, I got a little off, just a hair. You can kind of see. What I'm gonna do is heat it up in the vise and I'll straighten it. But I'm gonna heat it up down in here, and then I'll straighten it out so my hook is straight. It happens from time to time, guys. Whenever I went to hammer, it got hung up in my pocket and I couldn't move it my first swing. I kind of had too many things happening at once. So don't freak out, we'll fix it. All right, guys, so here's our next step. I drilled the hole just a little bit. One is, I'd like to say I did it on purpose, but I didn't mean to. I got mixed up where my holes were. But I made it a little bit bigger so I could see it, so it worked out. I am gonna go half on, half off blows on the anvil, just to distinguish where I want this to be at, and then I'm gonna taper into it. Now, be careful when you're hammering. When you're hammering flat steel, you'll do something called quilting. It's where the metal no longer is smushing, it's rolling over on itself. You don't want it to quilt. Before I lose my heat, let me get this mark established right there. Flip it over, right there. So, that's where, from here up, I'm gonna draw out to our hook. working the full length of the metal, guys. Now, as you see, it's starting to roll over on itself. That's when you come in and you start hammering it flat. Some quilting a lot of times will happen, and it's not the end of the world, but you don't want it to be really prominent in your material. As you can see, I'm not going past where our mark is here. If I did, it was just a tiny bit. I want to taper it from here down. I don't want it to be a shoulder here unless you want it that way. I like having a taper in a lot of my material. It makes me feel like it's stronger instead of having just a really sharp shoulder. But if you look, you can see veins in the material. You'll see that as it's trying to quilt over. That's the metal trying to push together. So make sure you keep it hot too, guys. Now, as I'm working this, I'm going to go back to my flat. I'm going to flip it and start working the other side. When you're doing a taper like this, guys, you can get it offset, and one side will get more work than the other, and it looks weird. As you can see, it was looking like it was trying to quilt up on me. So I'm going to take and hammer it flat. And this is a process. You're still going to have a beefier hook at the top. But you can see everything's staying flat. Okay, guys, so back to the hook making. Now, as I said, this will be a beefier hook. Because I don't want it, there's going to be a lot of weight and I don't want it to bend. Now also with this process, if you were making like a double-edged blade, a double-edged sword, you would use the same process on drawing your blade out. Making big leaves, making good, really big scrolls, things like that. So I'm going to make this where the finial is going to be, because I always like putting finials on my hooks. I'm going to make that part a little bit longer, a little bit thinner. But I like where we're at on this. You can see we're pretty much even all the way down. We have enough material, it's very thick, and we're going to make our hook. Make sure you keep everything as flat as possible, guys. You don't want it to be wonky and you make your hook. Now up here it doesn't matter. If it is off a little bit, you can put a twist in it. If you like it, you should have put a twist in it. Otherwise, it's so early in the morning. Alright. Alright guys, I got this bigger piece of flat bar. I want to show you a quilt. So as I'm hammering, you can see this material is starting to fold over on itself. And you can see it's starting to put a wave in the material. That's called a quilt. Now, if I keep hammering on it without hammering it flat, I'm going to end up with it like this. Or it'll roll both sides on itself. So that's why you got to that's why you have to keep hammering it flat so you won't build up a cold shut or a weak spot where it'll crack. So remember this as you're working with flat bar of any size, guide. You can take just about any flat bar and turn it into square stock. You can hammer it down and it's almost as thin as you want. Just be very careful about the quilting. See if I can get it in there close so you can see that, guys. You can see there how it's almost making an S shape. And that's what happens, again, like I said, when it's doing the quilt, when it's trying to quilt over on you. All right, finish this out, make our finial. Now I am gonna round my hook up a little bit, where the hook's gonna be, that hook portion. Come to about right there, just kind of get it, knock the edges off a little bit. Draw that out just a hair more. All right, now come back out. I'm going to make my finial, be a little bit beefier finial, and then we will make our hook. All right, guys, so going to be making my finial. Now, it cooled down. When you're working with thicker material, it'll when it starts cooling down, stop, or you'll smash your finial. I've just always had that problem. So what I'm gonna do is go back in the fire, come back out, and I'll start rounding it out some more. Go back over the edge of the anvil. Now, I am gonna hammer this down and then back up a little bit. So let me get that fixed. Let me get it hot again. It's so cold this morning, guys. I'm gonna take right here, kick this to one side just a hair. I'm changing my design just a little bit. Design change, guys. I just didn't like the way it was going to look. Now I'm going to change it up a little bit. Remember, in blacksmithing, there are no mistakes. It's a design change. All right, guys, so we're going to make our hook. I'm coming over here to the horn of the anvil. Now, this is a very beefy hook. But I want it to be a very beefy hook. Because I want it to hold our material very well on the fire. So I quench the finial down again. I didn't like that little shoulder there. All right, so there is the hook portion for our trammel. Now, sometimes you might have to adjust these just a hair to get it to where everything hangs straight. Now, we're gonna have to come drift our holes and then bend up. Straightening that out. And then, guys, this project is finished. All right, guys, so we're gonna come out of the fire. We're gonna drift our holes. Now, we're gonna get it hot again and keep drifting these out till this right here will fit in there. Now, you don't want it to be too tight, you don't want it to be too loose. You kind of need it just right on this one. So, got a little bit more drifting to go. All right, guys, and keep drifting out this hole. Now, because my hardy hole is so big, I'm gonna move this around. Now, let's chug it. Almost perfect. Gotta go a little bit wider. So I flip my material over. And there we go, it stopped. Now, if I gotta grab another drift, I will. Let's see what we got here. I flipped the material over just to push the hole back in place. That right there is gonna work perfect, guys. So, that works out great whenever your drift has a stop on it and you just run it to the stop. Now, works and fits perfect. Now, the next part is we'll drift the rest of these holes and then we'll make our bend, and then really our trammel hook's done, guys. Alright, guys, another hole's ready. We're going to drift it, and really and truly, I am probably not going to show me drifting every one of these, because all you're going to be doing is watch me drive a drift down through a hole. But keep your metal good and hot as you're drifting. See how it's starting to bend? We're going to straighten that out. And I'm actually going to drift from the other side. Sorry. I'm actually going to drift from the other side. I don't want it to have a dimple on the back, so I'm going to go back and forth. Now, come back out on my next heat. I'm gonna go on this side. Make sure everything's good and straight. I'm gonna come out, go on this side. Now, you can see how it bubbled out on this one side. I personally don't care that it did that. If you wanna fix that, when you come out of the fire, you will quench this side. So it's gonna be kind of hard. You'll need to use a ladle. You'll quench a little bit of this side so it cools it down, and it'll start pushing out the other side a little bit more. All right, guys, so I'm all the way up to where my punch or my drift stops. I accidentally forgot to turn the camera on. You know how that goes. But here's our holes drifted. Again, if you want this side to be bubbled out a little bit more, just quench this side a little bit and it'll force it out on that side. If you get too far in your drifting process, you're not gonna do anything. So, I'm fine with it. I think it looks kind of cool, so I'm gonna leave it be. Now I'm gonna go on to the next holes and drift those out. And it's the same process all the way down. I'm not really gonna show it. I'm just gonna, or talk about it. I'm just gonna bring you along for the ride. But I'm gonna go all the way up to the top right here. So, going back in the fire, gonna have to grab my tongs. If you're using a coal forge, you can get pretty far into this without having to quench it down. With the gas forge, because it blows a flame out so far, I'm gonna go ahead and grab some tongs because it's starting to get warm back in this area. Alright guys, try to keep everything as square and as straight as possible, okay? You don't want it to get too wonky and you're not able to fix it. Alright guys, I am going to say this one more time. When you are drifting something, make sure your metal is hot. Okay? Do not drift something and it's cold, it will split. Now, looks good and straight. Little nipply kind of bulged out on the side, but I kind of like the look because it's pretty uniform. Good and straight. Can tweak things once I bend, get everything set up. All right, now going back in the fire, and I'm gonna do a bend here. I'm gonna come to the circle and then go about another ½ inch to make the bend. I want it to kick out just a hair. Not super, I don't want to be here, but just a little bit because it's going to help force that hook that hooks into the top holes in place. Alright guys, so we're going to come out. A little bit overhang. And we're going to make our bend. I got to move right here, sorry guys. Yeah, you can still see it good. You don't have to use your peen. I did that because my tripod's in the way. Now, I'm gonna get this as squared up as I can. Get everything as flat as I can. And that right there is the holder, or the trammel part of our hook, for the trammel hook. So, I'm gonna cool this down. We'll come back, put it together, and talk about what we learned. Alright guys, so let's get real for a minute and talk about what we learned today. Well, we made our trammel hook. And it works really well. It goes in each one of your slots. Now, I had to do a little bit of modifications to it. And I'll show you in just a second. Get that up there in that top slot. But, you can see how the trammel hook works now. You just lower it down to where if you need it closer to a fire. Raise it up if you need it away from the fire a little bit more. And you have enough hook hanging out from the bottom. Now, I did 19 inches because this will fit my tripod. You're gonna need to measure the distance between your tripod and where your fire is gonna be if you have a really big tripod to set this to where it'll work perfect. I have it to where it'll go all the way down to here, but it might not fit because I wasn't measuring whenever I did that one. It'll go all the way to that one. Yeah, I'll have to clean it up a little bit for this one down here at the bottom. I was kind of wondering if that one might not work, but I put it in anyways. But it's just a little bit of cleanup. It's no big thing. Now, to be honest, I'll probably never go past there, but it's no big thing. That's something I want to talk about is once you get this made, dry fit it. Because I had to straighten this just a hair because I bent it a little too much. And I kind of thought I did when I made it, but it's one of those, you can always go back and fix it, and you're always going to be tweaking. I don't like doing videos where I do everything perfect. I like showing you guys the mistakes because I see people all the time make things online, and it's like they always do it perfect, or they never make a mistake. And you're like, man, I want to be like that. Well, really and truly, they probably worked on that project like 10 or 20 times and showed you the best one. And I like showing the rough forge and what it looks like start to finish. If there's a mistake, if there's a hiccup, how to get out of that situation. So, what would I do to fix this? All I really have to do is trim up a little bit of this hook. So about right, need to cut off probably about a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch off of it, and it'll work perfect. Which is fine because I have more than enough sticking out the back. But I would rather have to trim off just a little bit than versus have to go back, straighten it, and rebend it, reforge it because it's too short. If it's too short, if it gets bumped, it will fall out, and then your stuff's hanging here like this in the fire. So, that's the construction of our Trammel hook. Now, on your flat bar, and as I showed in the video, guys, be careful with quilting. It will sneak up on you so fast, and you will not realize what's happening. And then all of a sudden, you've got this big, almost round bar, or round piece of metal that is potentially could break the thinner you get it. So, hammer for a bit, and right before you go back in the fire, flatten everything out. Hop on both sides, flatten it down. You'll start seeing a V shape start forming right about here. And you can kind of see it just a tiny bit, this line. That's where I didn't hammer the quilt out all the way. It didn't hurt anything because I could take it, heat it up, and tap it a couple times and really fix it. But it's a good example to pay attention. When you start seeing this form, start hammering it flat and get rid of it. Don't leave it. Because the more you hammer on it, the more it's going to start rolling over on itself, and you'll get cold shuts in those areas. When you're punching your holes, guys, like I was saying, if you end up getting big dimples on one side and that bothers you, heat up your material, cool off one side of it, and then run your drift through. Do not try to drift it all at once with that one side cold. You could still crack it, so be careful. Make sure when you do your bend to get it as 90 as you can. It doesn't have to be like 100% like right on perfect, but you do want it as close as you can so your material will hold in good. Again, I went a little bit further out when I did my bend, so it gives it just a little bit of an angle, not much, just a slight angle. So whenever I put my hook in, it's sticking out just a little bit. It's not a lot, but it is enough for me personally to feel like it's in there better. If you want to go a little bit wider out, you can. I have seen where they have stuck out about this far, guys, and they work very well. But this will hold a lot of weight for you when you're out camping. Now, let me talk about my punch or my drift for just a second. This is a store-bought drift. I don't even know. It doesn't even have... Yeah, it does have a name on it. It might be a pretty good one. I don't know. I can't really read the name. But this is not an expensive drift. It's probably from Northern Tool or somewhere. I don't know really where I got it. I could have picked it up somewhere. But as I hammered on it, you've seen it starting to deform. As I tapped this out, and I really wasn't hitting real hard, that deformed. These aren't made for what I'm using them for, but they work very well. So, at times, you'll have to go clean up your ends. That's a good practice to be in anyways. Even when you forge your own punches and forge your own chisels, over time, the top will mushroom. if you clean it up in the process before it gets bad, you don't have to worry about things chipping off. I always try to go and keep all my tools cleaned up the best I can. Sometimes I forget, I'm human. But I did want to say that. I know someone's going to be like, oh, you can't hit the end of the chisel, it's going to mess up your hammer. It doesn't, depending on the chisel. If you've got a really hard chisel or punch, it could. Or drift or whatever, it could. But I flipped it over, I tap them out. I've never had a problem with it, but I also know this is a softer steel than my hammer. So keep that in mind, that you will booger up the ends of these, driving them through things. And when you're going to do your drift and you're on your anvil, pay close attention that you're over your Pritzl hole or over your Hardy hole. You will knock a ding in your anvil very fast and not know it, and actually penetrate into your anvil some and damage it if you're not paying attention. I recommend, if you haven't done this a lot, put you a stop block down and set your metal on it when you start drifting, piece of aluminum or something, and then drive into that, and when you feel it bottom out, slide over your Pritzl hole or your Hardy hole, whichever one feels better. But guys, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. We will be doing some campfire cooking with our Trammel hook and with our spit. And I'm trying to think of some more things that we can do with our tripod spit, so far as other attachments and stuff that we could make for it. If you got any ideas, shoot me a message, leave a comment, and we'll see what we can do about making those. Guys, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. I will see you on the next one. God bless. Keep hammering.